Welcome back to another podcast on Stickside. Today we have Coach Childs, the head coach of St. Mary's College Lacrosse in Maryland, and he's going to give us a little information about Division III lacrosse and what his program's like. So, Coach, if you'd like to start off, could you just give us a little example about St. Mary's College and about Division III itself?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to do this, and this is a pretty neat little thing to kind of get our name out there, and I really appreciate you guys letting me do this. St. Mary's is a Division III liberal arts college. We're a state school, which no one really knows because we only have about 1,700 students, so we're a very small state school. We're a liberal arts school, which is very unique as well. Division III is I love to say that it's the best division to play in because it's for the love of the game. There's no scholarship money in it. So you get merit-based aid from like what you did in high school with your grades, need-based aid from whatever you need to attend school, but there's no athletic aid. And so I call it the for love of the game division. And, everyone who plays for us comes to us and plays because they just absolutely love lacrosse and want to keep going with their career and do it while they get an education. And lately, you've been seeing a lot of Division III players across the country graduate and take their COVID year at Division I schools and have been able to play with, quote unquote, the big boys. And it's been pretty awesome to see because it kind of tells you that there's a lot more parity in lacrosse than you would think, and that maybe like the very, very, very top end of Division I athletes, maybe they separate themselves. But even with that, you have some guys that are now Division III guys that are playing in the PLL. So, the Rogers kid from Lynchburg and certainly Cross Ferreira from Salisbury. And I know I'm forgetting a couple, and I feel bad about that. And I don't want to slight them, so I shouldn't have said anybody's name. But those are two that kind of come to mind. So the parity in lacrosse 1, 2, and 3 is pretty incredible to see. And, I'm really, really proud to kind of represent Division III lacrosse.
How do the hours work for Division III? Like I know like D2, we have certain hours that we have to like stick to. D1's the same way. Is it the same way in D3 or?
So we actually do more days. So we have 114 days that we're allowed to do lacrosse activity. And that pretty much over that 114 days, you have, fall ball and you have whatever you want to do in the spring. And pretty much the spring is the same for everybody. It's the fall that's very different. And the way that Division III works this year, which is new, is that you get more or less about 24 days that you can play around with in the fall. So if you want to, practice, it used to be, you had, we did everything by weeks, which was crazy because we'd get 19 weeks over the course of a year. And then you would count backwards. There's like a crazy formula that you had to do. You had to count backwards from your conference championship. And if you wanted to do 4 weeks of fall ball, you had to count backwards 15 weeks. If you wanted to do 5 weeks of fall ball, you had to count back 14 weeks. If you wanted to do 3 weeks of fall ball, you counted back 16 weeks. And so the days are a whole lot easier. We can use them whenever we want. They don't have to be consecutive. So it's made things a whole lot easier for us. But yeah, we don't really have an hours thing. So we want to practice for 4 hours a day and do 2-a-days. In the fall, we can certainly do that, which we don't do. We used to do that when I first got here because we were trying to build a culture of a little bit of a culture of work ethic and kind of creating a little bit of interdiscipline with some stuff. But our culture is really, really, really strong now, and we really haven't had to do too much of that in quite some time.
That's good. My next question was going to be about your like team culture and whatnot. But what do you look at? What do you look for when you're recruiting a high school player?
Absolute skill is the very first thing. And I'm not saying it's the most important thing, but it's the first thing. I mean, we want athletes. I can take an athlete and make him a better lacrosse player. It's a whole lot harder for me to take a lacrosse player and make him a better athlete. I can't do that at all. But now we have a strength conditioning coach that can do that. And so it's a little bit easier to take that athlete and get him much, much better at lacrosse quickly than the other way around. And then there has to be lacrosse ability second. And again, it's more like 1A, 1B. But then after that comes the really, really, really important thing, which is recruiting the individual and who that person is. And I want to say probably 95% of what keeps us recruiting a young man after we have 1A and 1B down is the character of him and his family. Zan, I had the opportunity to recruit you, and I'm not sure I've ever met a mom that's as nice or as sweet as your mom. And you were an awesome kid and fantastic to recruit. And so that's what we attack. And obviously I saw you play and was like, okay, Zan can help us a lot on the field. Let's go after him. And then when we got to know you and we talked to Coach Rogers about you, and then obviously just coaching you and being around you and getting to know you, we recruited your character because we have a thing that we say in the office, which is he our type of guy? Mm-hmm. And that'll kind of go into the next question of the character aspect or the culture aspect. But if you're not our type of guy, then you're probably not going to get along with me. And if you're not going to get along with me, I don't want you to come here because it's going to be miserable for you. It's going to be miserable for me. And so we really, really recruit to our type of guy, which is a high character kid who has a great work ethic, has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but wants to do great things in their life. And I don't just say in the classroom or I don't just say on the field, but wants to do great things in their life and wants to be a great husband and a great father and great in their community and great in their job. I'm a real big believer that how you do one thing is how you do everything. Yep. And so we really, really, really focus on that type of kid.
How do you say?
Sorry, before we get into like a culture type thing, can you kind of just go into like your history of coaching, how you like got into it, your playing career, or just anything like that, kind of how you got here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started playing when I was 8. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Baltimore, Maryland, where, you're almost born with a stick in your hand. And there's a picture of me when I was 1 wearing a diaper and a helmet and lacrosse stick. So I kind of got into the game when I was very, very, very little, and then didn't start playing seriously until I was 8. And around about 12, my mom and dad said, okay, you can either choose baseball or lacrosse. And I wasn't good at baseball, so I didn't enjoy baseball. So started playing lacrosse full time. Was incredibly fortunate to go to St. Paul's, which is one of the most historical high school lacrosse programs out there. We had lacrosse in, I think, 1913 and didn't have a baseball team until 1983, which is very different than, most high schools in America. And then from there, went to Dickinson College, went there to help grow and build their culture and build their program, and was able to do that. But, changing the culture of a program is like turning a cruise liner. It takes a whole lot of time to do and just a lot of effort. And so we did that over the course of 4 years. And it's awesome to see what Dickinson is now, because when I went to Dickinson, it wasn't what it is now. And then from Dickinson, I was always told that I would be a great teacher from everyone that ever met me or told me, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. Certainly wasn't smart enough to do anything to make a lot of money. So I figured I would do something I love, and went and taught at a high school in Georgia. It was a boarding school, and did that for 2 years and coached everything: middle school football, girls varsity basketball, helped out a little bit with varsity football, though I didn't know what I was doing. And then was obviously a lacrosse coach. I hated teaching. I hated grading papers. Actually, I didn't mind teaching, but I hated grading papers. And so I decided to get into coaching full time. Went to Limestone College, coached there for a couple of years. Started the program at Presbyterian College, helped them transition from Division II to Division I, and then took a job at Mercer and helped them start their Division I program. Absolutely hated Division I because there really, at times, the love of the game was really hard to find in those kids because it was a job. And I think there's a difference between going to work every day and having a job, and I get to go to work every day. Sometimes I think it was a job for those guys. And I was a horrible coach too. I mean, I was a terrible, terrible, terrible coach and really hard on them, and wasn't who I am today. And basically was told by the athletic director at Mercer that if we didn't go 500 the next year, I was going to get fired. And we were a second-year program with 2 scholarships and wanted to know why we weren't beating Ohio State and North Carolina in our second year. And I just decided that was way too much stress and pressure for me. I wasn't going to handle that very well. So I went to a Division II school called Shorter University, helped transition them from NAIA to Division II, had an incredible time there, got back. I found the love of the game again. I found the love and the passion for coaching again. Did a whole lot of soul searching, maybe more than anybody wants to know, but became a born-again Christian and really, really, really found my faith and found Jesus and what that meant to me and how I could translate that into being the coach that I wanted to be. And then 9 years ago, got hired at St. Mary's and transitioned into that and have been there 9 years. And we made the NCAA tournament last year, won our conference, won the first NCAA tournament win in program history last year. And then almost beat number 5 Middlebury last year in the second round. So it's a fun year and a pretty long journey. So thanks for asking, Greg.
Yeah, of course.
What do you think? You said that you're a terrible coach at Mercer. What do you think that why do you think that? And what do you think that you did to change? Do you think finding God helped you a lot with coaching?
Well, I think what happened is I became a lot less worried about me and a whole lot more worried about everybody else. And I did a really, really, really great job of talking the talk, but I didn't have a ton of integrity with that, Zan. I did truly believe and love the guys that were playing for me, but I would get so obsessed with winning games that nothing else mattered. And I wouldn't cheat to win games, but I would cheat my relationship with those guys all the time. And I really regret it. And I can't say I hate it because it brought me to who I am now. But I don't like who I was then. I was a horrible husband, neglected my wife. She was having our third child and I was taking a nap on the hospital couch there until she was actually going into labor, and I actually she woke me up and was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was just so obsessed with winning, and I had my priorities all out of whack, and I just wasn't a very, very, very good guy. I'm Zane, I'm 5'6", 5'7" on a really, really good non-gravity day, and I was 225 pounds because I was just I was stressed out. I was eating. I have a sweet tooth. I was not at all who I wanted to be. And so I think a lot of it became a lot about getting lost in the process of building a program and building a team and truly practicing how much I love the guys. And then it just became a journey of how do I hold guys accountable to what they said they were going to do long after the feeling of them wanting to do it left, but still being I don't want to say a nice guy because I've always been nice, but being able to hold guys accountable and have them understand that I'm doing it because I love them. And
because you want them to be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to find because especially for me, I have that character trait that I want everyone to like me. And for instance, the other day we got in some trouble here and we do a thing here at St. Mary's. It started when I was at Mercer, but if we do something that isn't being great in everything that we do, because our mission is be great in everything you do so we can win our day. Well, your behavior has consequences, and one of the consequences was I took out a deck of cards, and whatever I pull up that number, you have to run that many laps, and we wound up running 9.75 miles one night. And the neat thing about that is that the guys instantaneously, they never were mad at me, they were never upset. They literally said, this is our consequences. They don't hate me. They love me. I was telling dad jokes in the middle of it, and they were laughing and having a great time with it. And I think that's kind of a testament to our culture. But I had to figure out very much, Zan, like, how can I hold guys accountable to behavior that is going to make us great, but at the same time have them still love me. And that was something that I had to work on for probably 40 years before I've kind of have gotten to the point where I am now. You got any
tips on how to do it?
Absolutely. You got to love people. And by loving them, you have to be really vulnerable and just tell people the why of why you're doing that. I get zero. And I needed them to understand that I get nothing out of standing in 30 degrees watching people run. I have 3 kids at home. My daughter's getting ready to go to college, so I'm running out of time with her to like hang out with her every day. I have a wife that I absolutely love, and she's my best friend in the world, and I'd rather hang out with her than go stand out there and watch guys that I love be in pain. Yeah. And so I try to explain that to them, but I also try and tell them that I will sacrifice a lot of that stuff because I love them to make them better. And I think I'm extremely vulnerable. If you're ever around me for, I would say, a week, you're going to see me cry at least once, whether it's crying because I'm happy. My mom is 100% Polish, so I can be very emotional. Or whether you see me cry because we lost a game and I feel bad for the guys in the locker room that they gave everything they had and they lost. If you're around me during senior day, you'll see me cry a whole lot where I can't talk. If you're around us at the end of the game, at the end of the season, when we play our last game, I probably can't talk for about 2 days because I'm crying so much. So I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to be who I am. And I absolutely tell the guys I'm sorry all the time when I get too emotional. If I get too mad at them, I tell them I'm sorry. The wisest thing that someone ever told me was when a team plays a lacrosse game, they've gone into battle. And if you look at the Army, when they go into battle, they don't get yelled at after they go into battle. They are cared for. They are nursed back to health. And then the next day they start looking at what could we have done better. But after they've lost a game, they don't want to hear how bad they are. They don't want to hear how bad they did. And I had never, ever thought that way before, because growing up, you lose, you get yelled at, you win, everyone's happy. And I remember hearing that my first year at Shorter from a dad who was involved in the military. And it made so much sense that at that moment, I never, ever yelled. I shouldn't say never, ever. I've seldomly yelled at a team after we played a game. Now, if we win, there are times where I will actually get onto a team. If we haven't played well and we won, just so they kind of shaped the win, that it was kind of one of those weird things where you have a good consequence from bad behavior. And I hate to live in the good consequence of a bad behavior. So that may have been more than you were asking for, Zan, but.
No, that's awesome. So I know for Zan and I, we're starting to be like the older guys on our team, and we're going to have to take over like leadership roles. What makes a good leader? And as a coach, how do you like build like a good leader of like a player?
Well, I think the first thing that you want to do is there's an idea of leadership capital. And there's a guy, Jocko Willick. I don't know if you guys know who Jocko is, but if you type him in and you type in Jocko leadership capital, it'll come up and he'll talk to you a little bit about what that is. And he does a really good job of explaining that. But the way that I explain it is that you have a kind of leadership bank account in everybody that you're going to be leading. And if you look at it like a bank account and you love them and you care for them, you do all these amazing things with them and you build a relationship. And let's say you've put $1 million into that relationship. Well, you can only take $1 million out. And even at $1 million, you're probably going to be back to square one. But if you have $1 million in there and you take $500,000 out, you're still playing with house money of $500,000. And so you just want to build your leadership capital with those guys. And again, you do that by loving them very vulnerably, very honestly, and building a relationship and really caring about them. When you ask them a question, you want to care more about what they're saying than what you're going to say in response. And so that's a trick to actually listen to somebody. And I didn't learn that until I was probably 30 years old. No one really cared about what I had to say in response. They just wanted me to listen to them. And that's a real big trick that if you do that, I can't tell you how much if you become a great listener, people are going to flock to you. And so I think that's a real big thing for building that leadership capital. And then having character, I say integrity more so than character. And what I mean by that is doing what you said you were going to do when no one is watching you, because that's the hardest time to do the hard things is when no one's watching you. You could take a shortcut. I think those are the two biggest things that you can do to build your leadership capital, because someone in this day and age with cameras all over the place, someone is watching you. Someone is going to see you do the right thing when you don't think anyone knows that they're watching you. And if you do those things, if you can have integrity, and you can love people vulnerably, I think you're well on your way to being a great leader. And then I would say the last thing is to clearly, very, very, very clearly communicate what you want, and don't bring emotion into it.
I think that's my hardest part. Like I'm like, I gotta have some Polish in me or something.
Yeah.
I get pretty emotional.
Well, I think you can be emotional surrounding what you want, but in the point where you tell them like, hey, we need to be in the locker room at 9:00. And this is why we need to be in the locker room at 9:00. Just make sure that that's done without emotion so they hear it. And then if you want to get emotional as to, like we need to be in the locker room at 9:00 because we need to make sure we leave on time. Then you want to get into like emotionally about why we want to leave on time. I think that's fine. But being very direct and very clear with what you want to get across, because if you just throw in there in like a rant 9:00, no one's going to remember that because they're just going to remember you going nuts. And then someone's going to be like, what time did he want us there? Again, that took me a long time to understand and learn. So what else can you think of?
I would say, what are some challenges you have faced since you took the coaching position and at St. Mary's, and how have you overcame it?
Absolutely. So, not to get too in depth with this, but I think there are two types of leaders. There are transformational leaders, which want to transform you as a human being and make you a better person, and not maybe make you a better person, but keep you on the path to being the person that, you wanted to be. And then I think there are more transactional leaders, which are, I'm going to do this, and in return for this, you're going to do this for me. And there's a transaction there. I am very much a transformational coach, and I've told everyone this that I've coached for many, many, many years, that I would rather be at your wedding than win a national championship. And I would love to think that we can do both. But if you invite me to your son getting christened, that's going to mean more to me than us winning a national championship. And again, it's probably like 1A, 1B, and it's really, really close, but that's how I coach. It's all about the relationship first. When I got here, the coach before me, and there's nothing wrong with this, but he had a different way of doing things, and he was more transactional. And so when I got here, a coach typically recruits guys that they're going to get along with and can coach and that they see. And so if you have a transactional coach, you're probably going to have some transactional players. Well, I was a transformational coach coaching transactional players, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I would say things, like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And they would look at me and be like, well, I mean, like, if I'm late to like practice, that mean I'm going to be late to class. And in my mind, I'm like, absolutely. But in their mind, they're like, no, they're different. Very, very pointedly, guys would get really, really excited to play one team, like a Salisbury, and then we would play someone like the Sisters of the Poor, and they wouldn't get excited about them and thought we could just go do whatever we wanted and not win.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, we very much had to become a transformational program inside and out. And it took 4 years. I wasn't just going to go kick everybody off the team because that wasn't the right thing to do. So we went through some really, really, really hard years here of building that and transitioning into the transformational. And from a record standpoint, it looked awful. We were 4-9, 1-14, and that school doesn't even exist anymore because it closed its doors. So I don't know if that makes me 0-14 now that year. And then we were 5-12, and then 10-8. And then all of a sudden, right before COVID, we were 5-2. Had a really, really bad COVID, but that was like the way that we at St. Mary's handled stuff. We weren't allowed to be in the locker room together. We weren't allowed to be in the weight room. We weren't allowed to do captain's practices. So it really hurt our transformational aspect of things. But then 2 years ago, we went 14-4. Last year, 15-6. And so as we've worked through the transition of being more of a transformational program, we've actually become a lot more successful. And again, some of it has to do with talent. We've had some really, really, really talented kids here. But for the most part, the hardest part for me was getting guys to believe that transformational was better than transactional, and that me loving them and them loving me was better and more important than winning a national championship. And it's one of those really weird things that until you do that, you will never win a national championship. And that's the way that I believe it. That's the way that I see it. So that's kind of the hardest thing that I went through here.
Yeah. At Hartford, at least, like my first 2 years, like my first year, we probably had like the best standout, like best players that we've had at Hartford. But like we didn't really do stuff the right way whatsoever, like off the field and on the field. Second year, like some of us were bought in, some of us weren't. Then third year, I would say we didn't have nearly have the talent that we did my first 2 years, but like everyone was bought into getting better every single day and holding each other accountable. And that was like the best team we had. So like for me, like I took a step back and I was like, wow, we didn't have some kid that was committed to Maryland and Towson and Marquette on the team. Like, but I think in my eyes, we were a lot better because everyone was like bought in and actually, I don't know, wanting to get better every day.
Yeah. I'm telling you, someone told me this one time that there are 1,000 Michael Jordans out there around the country that no one knows about. Mm-hmm. But the reason we know about Michael Jordan is that he held himself accountable. He was held accountable. And he took all of that talent and found a drive to become the greatest basketball player of all time. And I know I'm probably talking to two guys that maybe like LeBron because there's an age difference here, but I'm a Jordan guy. And I
like Kobe.
Yeah, I like Kobe as well.
I'm a Jordan guy. I'm a Jordan guy.
So, but that guy it was someone that I knew like 20 years ago. And he was like, yeah, there are 1,000 Jordans out there, but Jordan just was held accountable, was disciplined, and that drove a behavior. And obviously we all saw the performances that he gave. And it kind of goes back to what you said, Zan. Like it is all about, do you have there's a thing that we do here. It's called the performance pathway, and it's mental toughness drives discipline. Discipline drives behavior. Behavior drives performance. And if you don't have mental toughness, you better have accountability from someone. Mm-hmm. And that'll keep you in the discipline pathway. But if you have bad mental toughness or no mental toughness, you're going to have no discipline, which is going to give you bad behavior, which is going to give you a bad performance. And so we talk a lot about that here, is that you need to have mental discipline or mental toughness to drive the discipline to drive the behavior to drive the performance. Without mental toughness, you better have the greatest people around you to hold you accountable to do what you say you need to do to be disciplined. And that's kind of how we break things down here. And that's why ultimately the guys will run 9.75 miles, because they understand, like, we were lacking mental toughness, and coach is there to have that for us when we can't have it for ourselves.
That's good.
Cool.
I feel like if you don't have mental toughness, though, it's hard to take corrective criticism. That's definitely probably hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're mentally tough enough to want to get better, and you understand that I want to get better and that this guy is here to help me, I think when you frame it that way, you can do it. I'm a pretty stubborn guy, Zan. If you get to know me long enough, you'd be like, wow, he's pretty stubborn. But I'm also a lifelong learner, and I've probably at this point have read close to 200 books. And out of those 200 books, not one of them is Catcher in the Rye or Pride and Prejudice or all these things I was probably supposed to read in school. But they're all written by a coach or someone who leads some way, somehow, something.
I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. We'll probably have to wrap this up soon, but do you have a favorite coaching memory that like sticks out in your mind that's just like your favorite, like winning a championship or just something?
It's so hard because I don't want to slight anybody that I've had, because I've been coaching now for 23 years. I will say some of my fondest memories are being on the bus with the guys afterwards. We have a tradition here where if we win a big game, and again, if we win a big day, I'll put it that way, because we don't win games here, we win days. That's what we talk about doing. But if we win a big day, I sing Sweet Caroline on the bus. It's a horrible rendition, and it's terrible, and it's awful. And if you go to our Instagram page, you can see me doing it in the locker room. I'm a terrible singer, but the guys love it. And there's an awesome little story about, how it was born out of, and I don't want to waste everybody's time here, but
no, go ahead.
So we were going to Southern Virginia in 2019, and we hadn't beaten them in my time here. We had set up the perfect weekend where we went and watched Richmond play Virginia at Virginia. We stayed the night. Dom Starsia, who was a legendary coach at Virginia, came and talked to us in the hotel. We had everything set up perfect. Everything was going great. We get up the next morning, great breakfast. We're driving to Southern Virginia. We're about an hour away, and the bus broke down. And all I cared about was winning that game. I was just like so focused on winning that game. And Southern Virginia was great, and they backed the time up, and we got this and that. So anyhow, we were on there, and the guys were singing karaoke, and they were doing an incredible job. Looking back, I probably felt a whole lot more comfortable than I'm letting on now, because they were just singing karaoke and having a great time and loving each other, and it was an awesome bus to be a part of. But I was so stressed out because I was like, oh, this has to be perfect. I remember texting my wife being like, we're going to lose. The bus broke down. And somehow, after an hour on the side of the road and an hour of them singing karaoke and an hour of them doing whatever, at one point they were playing charades. They got the bus up and going and this and that. Well, they had asked me if I wanted to sing karaoke, and I was like, I'm so stressed out at that point, trying to figure out what we're going to do. I'm not singing karaoke. And I remember just being like, there's no way in hell I will ever sing karaoke. And we get to Southern Virginia, and we get there, and they have like a volleyball tournament, like where our locker room is. So even that's a mess. We can't get in the locker room, so we have to change on the bus. It was just as perfect as Friday went the night before. Saturday was awful. Then we get there, and the manager had forgot to pack 2 seniors' jerseys. So then we had to deal with that. I mean, it was everything that could go wrong.
Some adversity.
It absolutely. We started all in the face, and we wound up winning. We played really, really well. We won the game, and I'm sitting on like a broken down golf cart outside the locker room after the game. And I was talking to my wife, and she's like, you should probably sing karaoke. They would love that. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I started thinking, like, what song do I know off the top of my head that I know every lyric to that they would know? And I'm like, at that point, I'm 40 years old, and I'm talking to a bunch of, I'm working with a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds. So what song would they know? And I don't know, Sweet Caroline popped into my head. And so we got on the bus, and we had a guy who was in the Marines, and he wasn't with us. He was actually in Japan with the Marines, and he had put something in the wrong group chat. So he meant to put it in the players group chat. He put it in the group chat with me, and it was a very much an off-colored meme, and I used that to my advantage. I was like, okay, well, now I can act pissed off. So I told everyone to sit down and shut up, and I'm like really, really mad and angry. And they thought I was serious and I was joking around. And as soon as I got the whole bus quiet, I just started singing Sweet Caroline. And they got into it. We were going crazy and this and that. And so from that point on, it has just become a tradition that if we win a day, not a game, but if we win a day, because we had won that day. I mean, everything that could go wrong, we just literally were like beating back adversity all day long. And so if we win a day, we sing Sweet Caroline. And those are always fond memories. I will also say when I was coaching at Darlington, which was my first year of coaching, this is when I knew I wanted to coach for the rest of my life. There was a young man named Matt Stunkel, and he had never played lacrosse before, but he was a football player. He was a really, really, really great athlete, and he was a sophomore. And he was a D-Midi, and this is the first time he ever played the sport. And he got the ball on his stick, and he couldn't cradle. He was incredibly athletic. And all I wanted him to do was run as fast as he could to get to the box so I could call a timeout. And it was a huge moment in a huge game. I mean, this is 23 years ago. And he gets to the box, we call a timeout, and I sprint from the box, the sideline, over to the far side of the field where he was. And I jump up and he catches me and I give him a big hug. And I'm like, that was incredible. And it wasn't a goal. Literally, he picked up the ball and ran 40 yards really, really fast without cradling it and dropping the ball. And that was like the moment in my life where I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. This is so much better than playing lacrosse. I love coaching. And that's kind of, Zan, kind of going back to what made me a bad coach. I had forgotten that feeling when I was at Presbyterian and Mercer and rediscovered it when I got back to Shorter and realized, oh my God, this is what I love doing, building up young men to do things that they never thought they could ever remotely do. And that's kind of the high that I get from coaching. And so those would probably be, there's probably like 1,000 memories and they're all flushing into my head. And we don't have enough time to talk to you about all of them. But I would say singing Sweet Caroline with the guys and then that moment with Matt Stunkel that made me want to coach for the rest of my life.
Yeah, those are awesome.
So,
all right, one more question.
Okay.
If you could you give some reasons why you would pick St. Mary's College? Like,
I mean, if you come to St. Mary's College and you've been here, Zan, I don't know that there's a more beautiful campus, like natural beauty. I mean, I know like there are plenty of schools out there that spend a whole lot of money to make their campus look pretty, but God did all the work down here, and it's amazing down here. It's beautiful, right on the river, just natural beauty all around. It's going to sound really weird to say on a lacrosse podcast, but the best sunsets you will ever see. And if you've ever been to St. Mary's at night, you understand what I'm saying. And I honestly, someone once told me, I was my first boss. He was the head coach at Limestone. He said, you should always go coach at a place that you would want to send your kids to. And that way, if you do that, you'll always be coaching somewhere that means a lot to you. And my daughter, who is a senior, is coming to St. Mary's to play volleyball here next year. And so I'm very much going to live what T.W. Johnson once told me. And so I think because of how beautiful it was, I felt really, really comfortable with my kids going there, great education. And most importantly, the reason I want my daughter to go to St. Mary's is there are amazing, amazing people at St. Mary's. So how beautiful the campus is naturally with the landscape, the people there make it even more beautiful to be around. And that to me is really, really important because it's kind of not what you have, it's who you get to have those things with that make it really important for us. And so I would say those things are kind of why. And Being a state school in the state of Maryland, I knew it was going to be pretty easy to recruit here because we're not that expensive in a state that has some pretty good lacrosse. So from a non-deep or non-philosophical reason, that was probably a big help as well.
Yeah, everyone, at least at Hartford, they used to all make fun of me for being from Southern Maryland. I'm like, dude, you've never been down there. I was like, once you go down there, you'll understand.
It's God's country.
Yep, I love it.
Yeah. Well, you are welcome back. We love to have you home anytime. So make sure you come see me when you're down here.
I will.
Greg, if you're ever with them, make sure you stop by.
I'll definitely come for a visit. All right,
Coach. Well, we can wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I know you said 20 minutes and here we are doubling that, but thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It was a great time. Really, really got I got a kick out of this and meant a lot. And I really incredibly grateful and appreciative of you guys letting me do this.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for coming on here. This was awesome. You had some great stories.
Absolutely.
This was
good luck this year as well. Okay.
Thank you. I think we're going to be posting this on YouTube and then like some short clips on like Instagram and TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want us to like tag you guys or something?
That would be awesome.
Okay.
I would absolutely love for you guys to tag me.
All right, cool.
So yeah, tag. You can tag me in the program. That'd be great.
Awesome. That's what we'll do.
All right. So that's all we have for today. All right. So that was Coach Childs of St. Mary's College. That wraps it up for episode 2 of Stickside. And we'll see you guys next time.